15 U.S. towns you should never move to in 2026. If you've ever dreamed about packing up your life and moving to a quiet American town for a fresh start, this video might save you from making a very expensive mistake. Because while some towns in America are booming with opportunity, others are struggling with rising crime, shrinking economies, abandoned neighborhoods, failing infrastructure, and populations that are disappearing year after year. And the scary part is that some of these places look perfectly normal at first glance. Today, we're counting down 15 U.S. towns and cities you may seriously want to avoid moving to in 2026. Now, to be clear, every town has good people. Many residents are trying hard to improve their communities. But statistically speaking, these places continue to struggle with some of the worst combinations of crime, poverty, unemployment, drug issues, or economic decline in the country. Recent FBI crime data still shows several of these cities ranking far above the national average for violent crime. Let's begin. Number 15. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Pine Bluff has been declining for decades, and unfortunately, 2026 doesn't look much better. Once supported by manufacturing and agriculture, this city now struggles with population, loss, poverty, and violent crime. Entire neighborhoods have rows of abandoned homes, collapsing buildings, and empty storefronts that make parts of the city feel frozen in time. The population has dropped dramatically over the years, sitting at roughly 40,000 residents today. A large percentage of residents live below the poverty line, and younger people continue leaving in search of better opportunities elsewhere. Crime remains one of the city's biggest problems. Residents frequently report burglaries, thefts, assaults, and gang-related violence. Some neighborhoods become nearly deserted after dark because locals simply don't feel safe walking outside. What makes Pine Bluff especially concerning is the lack of economic momentum. Many struggling towns at least show signs of growth or redevelopment. Pine Bluff still feels stuck in survival mode. And sadly, Pine Bluff is only the beginning, because our next town has become infamous across America for violence. Number 14. Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis is known worldwide for music history and barbecue culture, but behind the tourism lies a city dealing with severe crime problems. Recent FBI crime rankings continue placing Memphis among the most violent large cities in America, with violent crime rates dramatically above the national average. The city has around 620,000 residents, and while many neighborhoods are thriving, others are overwhelmed by gang activity, shootings, robberies, and car thefts. In some parts of Memphis, residents install bars on windows and security cameras everywhere simply to feel protected. Poverty also plays a major role. Large portions of the city struggle economically, and many communities suffer from underfunded schools and limited job opportunities. What makes Memphis complicated is that it's a city of extremes. One block may feel perfectly fine, while another nearby area feels dangerous even during daylight hours. And when cities become this divided economically, problems tend to grow fast. But if you think Memphis's issues, the next place has been battling decline for generations. Number 13. Gary, Indiana. Gary has become one of America's most famous examples of urban collapse. Located just outside Chicago, Gary was once a booming steel town packed with middle-class jobs and thriving neighborhoods. But when the steel industry declined, the city's economy collapsed with it. Today, the population is less than half of what it once was. Thousands of abandoned homes still sit throughout the city, creating entire blocks that look almost post-apocalyptic. Some areas feel nearly abandoned, except for a handful of occupied homes surrounded by empty lots. The unemployment rate remains higher than the national average, and many younger residents leave as soon as they can. Gary is one of those places where you can physically see economic decline just by driving around for 10 minutes. And unfortunately, the Rust Belt has several towns facing similar problems. Number 12. Flint, Michigan. Flint became nationally known because of its devastating water crisis. But the city's struggles go much deeper than that. Even years later, Flint still battles population decline, distrust in local government, and aging infrastructure. Many residents continue worrying about water quality and public health. The city has around 80,000 residents today, a dramatic drop from its manufacturing peak decades ago when General Motors fueled the local economy. Poverty levels are also extremely high, and many homes sit abandoned. One of the saddest things about Flint is that you can still see traces of what the city used to be. Large buildings, wide streets, and old neighborhoods hint at a much wealthier past. But while Flint struggles to recover, our next city has become one of the scariest places in the entire country. Number 11. St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis is one of those cities that constantly feels caught between revival and decline. On one hand, it has iconic landmarks, historic architecture, major sports teams, and a strong cultural identity. But beneath that, the city has struggled for decades with population loss, economic inequality, and aging infrastructure. The city's population has fallen dramatically from its peak in the 1950s, leaving behind entire neighborhoods filled with vacant buildings, neglected homes, and empty industrial spaces. Many former manufacturing jobs disappeared long ago, and some communities never fully recovered. One of the biggest concerns for people considering a move to St. Louis is how uneven the city feels depending on where you live. Some neighborhoods are modern, thriving, and heavily invested in, while others suffer from poor schools, deteriorating infrastructure, lack of grocery stores, and very limited economic opportunity. Residents also frequently complain about political division, slow redevelopment efforts, and major disparities between wealthy and struggling areas. In some parts of the city, you can drive just a few blocks and feel like you've entered a completely different world. What makes St. Louis difficult for newcomers is that the city requires a lot of research before moving there. Choosing the right neighborhood can completely determine whether your experience is positive or deeply frustrating. And unfortunately, the next city on our list may be even more symbolic of America's industrial decline. Number 10. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit has improved in some areas over the last decade, but parts of the city still face enormous challenges. The downtown core has seen investment, new businesses, and revitalization. But outside those redeveloped areas, many neighborhoods continue struggling with crime, poverty, abandoned buildings, and unemployment. Detroit's population has fallen dramatically from its peak of nearly 2 million people to well under 700,000 today. One thing many visitors notice immediately is how uneven Detroit feels. Some blocks look modern and revitalized, while others feel forgotten entirely. And that contrast between wealth and abandonment creates tension that never fully disappears. But now we move south, where another city struggles with bad activity and deep poverty. Number 9. Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson has faced years of economic decline, infrastructure problems, and rising illegal activity. The city's water system failures gained national attention recently, but residents have also dealt with poor road conditions and struggling public services. Many middle-class families have left the city over the years, weakening the local tax base and making recovery even harder. Jackson's poverty rate remains extremely high, and many residents feel city leadership has failed to address long-term problems effectively. Some neighborhoods experience frequent violent incidents, while police staffing shortages have created additional concerns. And if failing infrastructure sounds bad, wait until you hear about our next town. Number 8. Cairo, Illinois. Cairo feels less like a struggling town and more like a place slowly disappearing from the map. Located where the Mississippi and Ohio rivers meet, Cairo was once an important transportation and trade hub. Decades ago, thousands of people lived and worked here, and the town had busy streets, schools, businesses, and industry. But over time, jobs vanished, families moved away, and the town entered a long period of decline. Today, the population has dropped to only a few thousand residents. Entire blocks sit nearly empty, with boarded-up homes, abandoned schools, and crumbling buildings scattered throughout the city. Some streets barely have any activity at all during the day. Economic opportunities are extremely limited, and many younger residents leave as soon as they graduate high school. The remaining population is older on average, and poverty remains a major issue across the community. What makes Cairo especially unsettling is how quiet and forgotten it feels. It's one of the clearest examples in America of a town that lost its economic purpose and never truly recovered. And while Cairo continues shrinking year after year, the next city faces a completely different set of challenges tied to inequality and declining quality of life. Number 7. Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham has deep historical importance in America, but modern-day residents still face major challenges tied to economic inequality and struggling neighborhoods. The city has around 200,000 residents, and while some districts have seen redevelopment, others continue dealing with aging infrastructure, underperforming schools, and limited job opportunities. Large portions of Birmingham remain heavily affected by poverty, particularly in neighborhoods that never fully recovered after manufacturing jobs disappeared decades ago. Empty storefronts and neglected buildings are still common in some parts of the city. Another issue many residents mention is how divided Birmingham feels economically. Some areas are filled with new restaurants, apartments, and investment projects, while others appear stuck in decline with little visible improvement year after year. For people considering a move, Birmingham can feel unpredictable depending on where you settle. Your experience in the city may vary dramatically from one neighborhood to the next. And speaking of cities struggling with uneven development, the next place on our list has become nationally known for urban decay and addiction issues. Number 6. Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore has beautiful historic neighborhoods and a famous harbor area, but outside the tourist districts, many parts of the city continue facing serious long-term problems. Entire blocks of vacant row houses stretch across some neighborhoods, creating an atmosphere that feels neglected and forgotten. Population loss over the years has left certain areas struggling to maintain businesses, schools, and public services. Baltimore has also been hit extremely hard by the opioid epidemic. Drug addiction has affected thousands of families across the city and placed major pressure on hospitals, emergency services, and local communities. Economic inequality remains another major concern. While some neighborhoods have seen investment and rising property values, others still deal with high poverty levels, unemployment, and deteriorating infrastructure. Many residents describe Baltimore as a city with enormous potential that has simply struggled for decades to solve its deeper systemic issues. But now we head west to a city where soaring living costs have become just as big of a problem as public safety concerns. Number 5. Oakland, California. Oakland has a vibrant culture, beautiful weather, and easy access to San Francisco. But many residents say everyday life has become increasingly difficult. One of the biggest issues is affordability. Housing costs have skyrocketed over the years, pushing many longtime residents out of the city entirely. Rent prices remain extremely high, even in neighborhoods that still struggle with neglected infrastructure and visible homelessness. Encampments have expanded throughout parts of the city, and many locals say public spaces no longer feel as clean or well-maintained as they once did. Oakland also suffers from major economic contrasts. Luxury apartments and expensive cafes can sit only blocks away from areas filled with abandoned businesses and deteriorating buildings. For many newcomers, the biggest shock is how expensive the city feels compared to the quality of life some neighborhoods currently offer. And while Oakland struggles with affordability, the next town on our list is battling something even harder to escape: widespread addiction and economic hopelessness. Number 4. Huntington, West Virginia. Huntington became one of the national symbols of America's opioid crisis. This Appalachian town of roughly 45,000 residents has spent years dealing with addiction, unemployment, and economic decline after manufacturing industries faded away. Many residents describe the local economy as stagnant, with limited opportunities for younger generations. As a result, many high school graduates leave town searching for better careers elsewhere. The opioid epidemic deeply affected families across the community, overwhelming healthcare systems and creating long-term social challenges that the town still struggles to recover from today. Poverty rates remain high, and many neighborhoods show signs of economic hardship through abandoned properties and struggling local businesses. What makes Huntington especially sad is that many residents still have strong pride in their community, yet feel trapped by circumstances that have persisted for years. And now we move to one of America's most famous cities, a place filled with culture and tourism, but also major long-term struggles beneath the surface. Number 3. New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans is one of the most culturally unique cities in America, known worldwide for its music, food, nightlife, and history. But living there full-time can be very different from visiting for a weekend. Many neighborhoods continue struggling with poverty, aging infrastructure, flooding concerns, and slow recovery efforts years after Hurricane Katrina changed the city forever. Residents often complain about deteriorating roads, unreliable public services, and extremely high insurance costs tied to hurricanes and flooding risks. Economic inequality is another major issue. While tourist areas attract millions of visitors every year, many local communities still lack investment and opportunity. New Orleans also faces a constant battle against natural disasters. Hurricanes, heavy storms, and flooding remain yearly concerns that can quickly disrupt daily life and damage homes. For some people, the city's culture outweighs the challenges, but for others, the instability becomes exhausting over time. And unfortunately, the next city shows what happens when decades of poverty and disinvestment pile up without meaningful recovery. Number 2. Camden, New Jersey. Camden has spent decades trying to rebuild its reputation, but many parts of the city still struggle heavily with poverty and urban decay. Located directly across the river from Philadelphia, Camden sits near major economic activity, yet many neighborhoods continue dealing with abandoned lots, failing infrastructure, and limited economic opportunity. The city's poverty rate remains among the highest in the region, and many residents live paycheck to paycheck with few options for upward mobility. Schools in several neighborhoods continue facing major challenges, and many local businesses have disappeared over the years, leaving empty storefronts behind. Camden has seen redevelopment projects in certain areas, especially near the waterfront, but progress remains uneven across the city as a whole. For newcomers, the biggest issue is often the dramatic contrast between improved sections and neighborhoods that still appear stuck decades in the past. And now we arrive at the final city on our list, a place many Americans see as one of the clearest examples of long-term urban collapse. Number 1. East St. Louis, Illinois. East St. Louis was once an important industrial center filled with factories, rail activity, and working-class neighborhoods. But after industries collapsed and jobs disappeared, the city entered a long downward spiral that it still struggles to escape today. The population has fallen dramatically over the years, leaving behind large areas filled with abandoned homes, empty lots, and deteriorating infrastructure. Poverty levels remain extremely high, and many residents face limited access to stable employment, quality education, and investment opportunities. Driving through parts of East St. Louis can feel surreal. Some neighborhoods appear almost frozen in time, with collapsing buildings and streets that receive very little maintenance. What makes the city especially tragic is how little large-scale recovery has happened compared to other struggling American cities that eventually attracted new development and investment. For many people, East St. Louis has become a symbol of what can happen when economic decline continues unchecked for generations. And sadly, experts say meaningful recovery could still take many years, if it happens at all. And there you have it, 15 U.S. towns and cities that many people may want to think twice about before moving to in 2026. Now, once again, this list isn't meant to insult the people who live in these places. Every town we talked about today has hard-working residents, deep history, and communities trying to improve their future. But when you look at long-term trends like population decline, economic struggles, infrastructure problems, addiction, unemployment, and overall quality of life, these areas continue facing some very serious challenges. And honestly, one of the biggest takeaways from this list is how quickly a town can change over time. Some of these places were once booming industrial centers filled with opportunity, busy neighborhoods, and thriving local economies. But when jobs disappeared and investments slowed down, recovery became incredibly difficult. It also shows that cheap housing alone doesn't always mean a place is a good place to live. Sometimes the lowest home prices come with hidden costs that don't show up until after you move there. But now I want to hear from you. Which town on this list shocked you the most? And are there any places you think should have been included that we didn't mention? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.